الطاولة يرجى اختيار القناة الأولى. We're providing interpreters from English to Arabic for this session. If you need interpreting, please pick up a headset from the table outside this room. If you're using the headset, please select channel 1. سنقوم بتصوير الجلسة. يرجى الجلوس يسار القاعة في حال عدم رغبتكم بالتصوير. Please remember that the event is photographed. Should you prefer not to be photographed, kindly sit on the left side of the auditorium.
Welcome to the Qatar National Convention Centre. Your safety and comfort are very important to us. With this in mind, we ask that you take a moment to watch this short safety presentation. Emergency exits are located throughout the venue and are easily identified by illuminated green and white exit signs. Please now take a moment to locate your nearest emergency exit. Remember, the nearest exit may be located behind you. For your safety, please keep all aisles and exit paths clear at all times. For a likely event of an emergency alarm, a flashing warning light will be activated. Please remain calm and listen for further instructions. If you are required to evacuate the building, an announcement will be made in both English and Arabic. In the event of an emergency evacuation, please move swiftly to the nearest emergency exit. Some venues, such as the theatre and auditorium, have illuminated escape path lighting to guide you to the nearest emergency exits. Please follow the instructions given by the fully trained UNCC staff and quickly to the nearest emergency exit, following the signs until you are outside the building. Once outside, you will be directed to the nearest assembly point where you will receive further instructions. If you discover a fire, please raise the alarm using the manual call point. This will immediately activate the emergency evacuation sequence. All alarms will be responded to by the QNCC team. If you require first aid assistance, please approach a member of the QNCC team. QNCC is a non-smoking venue, and smoking is not permitted at any time in any part of the venue. Should you wish to smoke, please use the designated smoking areas which are located outside the building. Thank you for watching. On behalf of all of us at the Qatar National Convention Centre, we hope you enjoy a safe and memorable visit.
سلام.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And good morning, Your Excellencies, fellow members of academia, ladies, gentlemen, and honored guests. On behalf of the Translation and Interpreting Institute of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences of Hamad bin Khalifa University, I'm delighted to welcome you all to the 10th Annual International Translation Conference. As happens in all our annual gatherings, throughout this event, we will endeavor to explore in the field of translation. And like every year, please do not forget to tweet and share your thoughts throughout the conference using the hashtag #TII_10th. Instead of this special occasion, our communications team prepared a special video highlighting all of our previous conferences. Let us watch. Our conference's theme this year is Translation Beyond the Margins. As we all know, translators and interpreters, by the very nature of their work, most often go invisible, even if much of the global economy and international political engagement hinges on their work. However, this invisibility of which Benuri speaks does not deter them from constantly taking down barriers and crossing margins. In a similar guise, translation studies strives to gain visibility while challenging and transcending disciplinary frontiers. It converges with and diverges from its sister disciplines within the humanities and social sciences, while mapping new territories in dialogue with other domains. In so doing, translation studies contributes to the crucial advancing of new and inspired knowledge in interrelated domains of inquiry. Looking beyond the margins may mean tackling topics that have never been addressed, or addressing mainstream topics from a new angle. It may also mean taking the viewpoint of other disciplines or views that are not compliant with others. It might simply mean embracing the risk of applying innovative or cross-cutting approaches to practices and/or research. Over the next 2 days, we will seek to understand the challenges and opportunities that lie beyond the margins. We will be sharing experience and knowledge, questioning our certainties, and expanding our horizons. I invite and encourage you to attend and participate in the various talks and panels, as well as to take part in the professional workshops available as we pursue our 10th year of translating words into actions. And now please join me in welcoming Dr. Amal Al-Malki, founding Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Hamad bin Khalifa University, in the opening remarks.
Your Excellencies, colleagues, friends, and students, good morning, and welcome to the 10th Annual International Translation Conference. This year's conference is very special to me. 10 years ago, as a professor at Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar, I wanted to connect what I do in class, teaching the only translation course in the education city, with the emerging interests back then in literary translation that has started with Bloomsbury Qatar Foundation Publishing. So I joined forces with them, and I organized the first conference in 2010. In 10 years, we moved from workshops led by renowned scholars like Mona Baker, targeted towards students and the small professional community in Qatar of approximately 40 people. And we evolved into a full-fledged academic conference and covered 10 different themes, continuing the conversation, bridging civilizations through translation, the traveling text, translation in and out of the world, texts and contexts, new cultural constellations in translation studies, global translation flows, translating the Gulf beyond fault lines, politics of translation, representation and power, 21st century demands, translators and interpreters towards human and social responsibilities, translating in the digital age, from translation tools to shifting paradigms, and this year's theme, translation beyond margins. As we celebrate the 10th year, we've chosen to take a closer look at where we were and what we have reached, and more importantly, where we're heading. We've chosen a post-colonial term here, margin, that refers to the problematic relationship between notions of center and periphery. The center, which denotes power that manifests itself in different forms, whether political, cultural, or even linguistic. While the margin or periphery is what has been sidelined and what lives outside the frames of the present and history as well. The center that has the power to express, and the margin that has no voice. Marginalization as a political and cultural processes affect people, groups, and nations. Think of the marginalized Palestinians vis-a-vis Israeli occupation, the marginalized women vis-a-vis patriarchy, and the marginalized labor workers vis-a-vis laws and systems. Translation comes to this equation, albeit discursively, forcing the status quo to alter. It is beyond the margins where translation takes place, or takes us. It is when translation becomes the voice of the voiceless, the reclaiming of the local histories in response to the hegemony of Eurocentric histories, and the redefinition of self beyond its limiting comparison to the other. Translation thus becomes the process of historical and cultural healing. Translation beyond the margins goes beyond borders and territories and beyond imposed mental and physical divisions to build common grounds for exchange and discussion. Translation here switches into an agent of change in the globalization era with the power to set the rules of cultural engagement. Academia and profession intersect to shape and define the experiences around us that requires mediation, and the translator becomes at the heart of this as a cultural mediator. Translation is an attempt to make sense of the world beyond the linearity that the pages of the book might suggest. Like writing, translation is an act of agency, a choice, a decision, and an ideology. You cannot talk about translation in isolation of ideology and power relations. Translation can certainly be an act of reinforcing, reproducing, perpetuating, or on the other hand, contesting, challenging, and resisting. Translation engages with cultural politics, gender politics, and certainly identity, politics, and representation. Spivak says, translation is the most intimate act of reading. The translator earns permission to transgress from the trace of the other and the closest of the self. Translation goes beyond the space between the source text and the target text, bringing the meaning closer to the identified or unidentified audience. The meaning here can go beyond determining the success of the translator to determining the destiny of an individual or a group or groups of people. Meaning becomes an existential matter when your subject is the voiceless, the oppressed, and the less fortunate. And the translator's choices here play a big role in the text politics and its reflection of or on reality. The translator decides, just like the writer and the reader, on either identifying or not with the text. The translator here becomes a part of the problem or the solution. In our 10th conference, we've taken on the challenge to go beyond the margins. We do it by celebrating linguistic and cultural diversity and by breaking down linguistic barriers as we see. We also do it by fostering collaboration and supporting innovation. Today, we take yet another step towards the future. At this conference, we will be testing live machine translation. We thank our colleagues at Qatar Computing Research Institute, who are here to share the outcome of years of hard work developing a deep learning system that recognizes, transcribes, and translates human voice automatically. What we are about to see is work in progress. The output may not be perfect, but this is the perfect moment to bring together artificial intelligence and human translators in a dialogue that goes beyond fear and anxiety, the human and the machine. Because let's remember that behind the machine is always a human. تتميز النسخة العاشرة من مؤتمرنا السنوي للترجمة عن سابقاتها باستضافة عدد أكبر من الأكاديميين والباحثين المتخصصين في مختلف مجالات الترجمة. وتنعقد نسخة هذا العام تحت عنوان ترجمة التهميش وتهميش الترجمة لتسليط الضوء على أهمية دور الترجمة والمترجم في تبادل المعارف ومد جسور التواصل بين الشعوب. إلى أن المترجمين وعلى الرغم من دورهم بالغ الأهمية في مختلف المجالات ومنها الاقتصاد والسياسة الدوليان ما زالوا يتبوؤون مكانة هامشية في المجتمع حيث يعملون في الظل متوارين عن الأنظار. وعلى نفس الشاكلة تحتل دراسات الترجمة هي الأخرى منزلة مماثلة في العلوم الإنسانية والاجتماعية ما أسفر عن تبعات ذات تأثير سلبي على تقدير مهنة الترجمة عموماً وعمق تهميش الأقليات والمستخدمين النهائيين للمادة المترجمة على حد سواء. وأرخى كل ذلك بظلاله على تطور المعرفة في ميدان الترجمة والمجالات المتصلة بها. على الجانب الآخر تنطلق فعاليات مؤتمرنا هذا العام ولأول مرة بجلسة افتتاحية ميسرة للجميع بفضل وسائل تكنولوجية طورها معهد قطر لبحوث الحوسبة بجامعة حمد بن خليفة. ينضم إلينا هذا العام أكثر من 40 متحدثاً والعديد من المشاركين من أكثر من 20 بلداً: قطر وعمان، الكويت وفلسطين، الأردن والمغرب، الجزائر وتركيا، إيران وإسبانيا، فرنسا وبولندا، سلوفاكيا والبرتغال، بلجيكا والمملكة المتحدة والهند، كوريا الجنوبية، جنوب إفريقيا، البرازيل والولايات المتحدة وكندا. ختاماً نرجو لمؤتمرنا النجاح والتوفيق في إثراء دراسات الترجمة وتعزيز التبادل المعرفي والإسهام في فك العزلة عن المترجمين المحترفين لضمان المكانة التي يستحقونها في المجتمع. أشكركم جميعاً وأخص بالشكر المتحدثين والمشاركين الذين تحملوا عناء السفر بالانضمام إلينا اليوم وأتمنى لهم طيب الإقامة في ربوع الدوحة. شكراً.
Thank you, Dr. Amal, for your insightful remarks. And now please join me in welcoming Dr. Joselia, Professor at the Translation and Interpreting Studies Department, to chair the panel.
Thank you, Neves. Ladies and
gentlemen, distinguished guests, allow me to pick up some of Dr. Amal's words. Today we are here to talk about margins, two sides, a here and a there, barriers and challenges. Above all, we are here to talk about opportunities. But we want to go beyond the margins. We want to cross over. This comes with curiosity, risk, and above all, courage. What better theme for our 10th annual International Translation Conference? And what better metaphor for who we are as professionals, researchers, and people living here and now in a very vibrant young country that looks beyond the margins in so many different ways. As a member of the Translation and Interpreting Department at CHSS, and I think I speak on behalf of my fellow faculty, colleagues, and our students, I feel privileged to be part of this journey that started 10 years ago. And I feel humbled by the work and dedication that year after year my colleagues put into organizing this conference. Above all, I feel grateful for the fragility of this moment. I can rightly say that the world sits in this room today, but I can also say that this room sits in the world at this moment, simply for what is happening not beyond the margins, but between the margins. Between the margins is translation. Translation in the voice of the interpreter that speaks Arabic on my behalf. And also in the hands of yet another interpreter, making my words visible to those who cannot hear me. The translation is also happening in the voice of a video describer, sitting at the back, whispering into the ear of those who cannot see what is shown on the screen or what is happening in this room. And then we have a machine. Like a child, it is learning, one word at a time, getting it wrong so many times. Believe me, one day it will get it right. Before we move on to our opening plenary session, please allow me to say that in this conference we are making history, and we are making a public pledge to work together across disciplines and across territories in the development of new tools and in the training of new professionals, and we are promising to keep looking beyond the margins to promote innovative research and to challenge those margins we create for ourselves. Dr. Amal, dear colleagues, please keep investing in the future of translation and interpreting, and do join us in the dizzy rides into intercultural communication, transportation, transcreation, intersensory mediation. Please support our wish to become humane mediators in hospitals and in other delicate environments. Please do book us tickets for the upcoming World Cup. Not in the fan zone, please, but in booths, behind microphones, behind computers, translating, interpreting, re-speaking, audio describing, creating multi-sensory materials. And while I'm at it, Dr. Amal, would you please order the cake for the 20th century? We love celebrations. This said, let this year's celebration begin, and I am most honored to be presenting our three distinguished keynote speakers who will be sparking this year's discussion. Our first speaker, Dr. Rytis Martikonis, holds a degree in law, political science, and international relations.
He studied in Lithuania, United States, Denmark, and the Netherlands. In his impressive career in Lithuania, he has held several prominent governmental positions, and he has played a vital role in the Lithuanian foreign affairs. After Lithuania's accession to the EU, he was ambassador in the Political and Security Committee of the Permanent Representation of Lithuania to the European Union, before becoming the permanent representative of Lithuania to the EU, a position he held 2005 to 2010. He was appointed to his current post as Director General for Translation in the European Commission in 2011. We are honored to welcome you to our conference, and we look forward to your presentation on translation excellence.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Excellencies, dear guests, colleagues, it is a real pleasure to be here in Doha, in Education City on this great occasion. First of all, let me extend thanks to the founding Dean, College of Humanities and Social Sciences, Dr. Amal, for this invitation, and for the story of the baby that you were telling last night and today. The baby, which is this conference, is up and running. It's up and running, and you shall be proud for that. I'm also grateful to the organizers, to Fatima Al-Afan, Senior Academic Coordinator, whose great care, not only in academic organization, but also logistics, was very helpful. Dr. Koch is authority in terminology, legal translation, as well as translation technology, and a good friend from Belgian times, from European cooperation. Today he's directing translation and interpreting studies here. Needless to say, I have to thank Qatar Foundation for bringing this diverse audience from so many countries, from so many walks of life, coming here together. As a colleague was saying, I also thank interpreters, both in the booth, both on the scene, but also challenging us with the technology. And this is one of the first times that I didn't know what to do, to read on the screen what machines are doing, or to listen to the human voices in my ears. The challenge, well, reflecting the realities of today. This university aspires to give the students opportunity to discover innovative solutions that are locally relevant, but have global impact, just as we have in the European Union language services, by making content accessible to a wide audience, wide European audience, bridging the gap between local and the global. The power of language and translation facilitates economic growth, international trade, promotes intercultural understanding. Our increasingly connected world will require ever more translation, ever more vital to know the laws of our global partners. Different parts of the world, similar goals. This is language of Europe. This is the story of multilingualism in European Union. And in a European Commission Translation Service, we have been delivering legal translation for over 16 years. European Union language services, and I include interpreters here too, enable the European Union to operate in all 24 official languages. We grew, the growth of the number was remarkable in itself. From the founding 4 in, when was it? In 1958 to today's 24 languages. In translation service of the European Commission, we translate more than 2 million pages every year in all 24 languages, which probably makes this the biggest public translation service in the world. Our mission is to provide translation and other language services of high quality to European Commission, to respect European Union's multilingual character by making sure the Commission produces clearly written documents in 24 official languages. To put it in the words of Umberto Eco, Italian philosopher, semiotician, literary critic and novelist, the language of Europe is translation. If you need to go through these metro stations, I think translation is inevitable. The language of Europe is translation. Today I will zoom into aspect of quality. Quality being a part of very DNA of our service. I'll summarize what it means in practice in the European public service and how we strive in excellence in translation. In the translation service of the European Commission, we say that quality is the extent to which a particular set of characteristics meet the stated or implied needs and expectations. Our starting point is to apply international standards, namely ISO 9000 on quality management system. It's not the only one, but this is the basis. It specifies fitness for purpose, the suitability of the translation for its purpose. Of course, there are levels of quality that different needs and purposes from translation apps and functions popping up on our screens to provide immediate understanding through to legislation and treaties. In the public service, we have the privilege and duty to provide top quality in translation, since our work carries legal force and is published. A translation error in legislation can happen in the focus of the case taken to a court of law with a high financial and reputational risks. So we aim high, we aim for excellence. And what makes the excellence? As Aristotle was saying, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. In this sense, we seek to make a habit of excellence by investing in the end-to-end quality of the translation process before, during, and after. Recently, our quality managers and training experts in the DG translation run a project to dig into excellence of the act of translation. What makes an excellent translator? What's the difference that makes difference? Much research into excellence shows that excellent performers aren't tapping into special talents or innate skills. They are excellent because they do things in a certain way. This analysis of ours identified translators' crucial capacity to hold a twin focus, both on meaning of the original and on the reader, able to change perspective, zooming in and zooming out of the text. That drives the ability to produce a translation that reads like an original, essentially becoming a co-drafters. Excellent translators showed a solid awareness of customization, applying different requirements to different text types, often also editing while translating if it improves communication. When doing this, they show an interesting mix of extreme cautiousness and self-doubt on the one hand, and extreme self-confidence on the other, double checking everything and at the same time trusting their professional intuition. In short, the analysis found that excellence in translation requires three main abilities: to care, to be aware, and to dare. Caring for quality, to create virtual circles for constant improvement, for rigor and for precision. Awareness being aware of multiple needs of different perspectives together with the capacity for self-calibration. Daring to be both self-confident and ruthlessly self-critical at the same time. Dare I say, also dare to embrace technology. For this, in the nub of the current challenge is the profession. We are riding a wave of digital transformation, reshaping translation just as it is reshaping many sectors and industries. It is affecting the types of technical skills needed and the ways we learn. Today's translators, be they in the public sector, freelance, language agencies, publishing houses, or video companies, are mastering the best of both worlds, human translation and machine translation. It is clear that at present we have machine-augmented human translation with high-end quality provided by human translators who are not only able to use the full range of computer-assisted input, but improve it too. But the reverse question cannot be ignored. Today's translators are working in symbiosis with language technology, much like this centaur, the centaur drawn by the cartoonist at our annual gathering of translator stakeholders in Translating Europe Forum last November. And here I think that we see, this is the centaur which Kasparov was playing chess and first winning, but then this, I think, a new centauri, I mean, in a new century, which is much more advanced and much more technological. And that is what we try to get used to in playing with cartoons. But now we have the augmenting human, we have data augmenting human capacities, and we are exploring moves towards humans augmenting machine capacities. Whilst in the past years, we amazed high quantities of language data and focused quality work on the human translator. Today, the quality of language data is key. So we must expand our concept of quality to cover data quality as well. Learning how best to manage, curate language data is now crucial. Professor Rytis of Massachusetts Institute of Technology was saying, technology belongs to all of us. We must all be alert to the risks posed by artificial intelligence, but this is no time to be afraid. Those nations and institutions which act now to shape the future of artificial intelligence will help shape the future for all of us. To breed excellent professionals, we need technical competencies and the mindset to care, to be aware, and to dare. We need also excellence of training. And this brings me to the European Network of Cooperation in Translation at master's levels, teaching the EMT Network. We launched it in 2009 as a partnership project between the European Commission and higher education institutions, offering translation programs and academic degrees at master's level. The main goal of it is to improve the quality of training for translators. Since its launch in 2009, the EMT network has grown from 34 to 64 participating programs that subscribe to the same goal of providing high-level training in translation. And we are in the process right now to select the next round of the network for the next 5 years. By setting up this network, the Director General of Translation of the European Commission is helping to create quality benchmarks for translator training across Europe and even beyond. It is a forum where universities can share experiences with practices, which in turn allows them to showcase their initiatives, share ideas, and develop their curricula to changing requirements. EMT, needless to say, provides networking opportunities that leads to concrete cooperation project. The cornerstone of EMT Network is the Competence Framework, updated just last year to reflect today's multifaceted demands. It set out a set of learning outcomes for master's degree programs in terms of competence and specific skills that graduates are expected to possess. 5 competencies you see on the screen, and one key message from here. Language competence, though fundamental, is no longer enough. Today, computer-assisted tools, training and machine translation are must-haves in translation study program, and the pace of technological development today means that tomorrow needs will look different again. What is clear that whilst digital skills and technological savviness were ancillary skills for yesterday's translations, today they are integral to translators' skill set. Other skills and profiles are also emerging as the profession changes. Project and process management, for example, awareness of data protection, just mentioned a minute ago, data ethics issues, and so on. Developing soft skills, empathy, building up the knowledge, real-world contextual knowledge, where digital tools falter. Building our human intelligence to marry with artificial intelligence in translation. In fact, the 3 features of excellence in translation: to care, to be aware, to dare correspond and apply to the EMT competencies framework. From what I can see, and I saw in the programs that this faculty and program in translation studies blends well important ingredients. Students are acquiring practical translation competencies on the course, for including advanced training in the use of translation technology and giving them work placement experience. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I would like to say the following. Though we work in very different geographies, as represented in this room, with very different sets of languages, the translation profession is grappling with similar issues. We are united by the challenges, aspirations, and dilemmas of the profession. Today's conference here in Doha, entitled Translation Beyond the Margins, is a good example of that, addressing issues of academia and training, activism, translation of literature and approaches to linguistics, machine learning, and multimedia gaming. With a degree of agility, nurturing a drive for continuous improvement, we have good reasons to be confident and optimistic. For example, preliminary results of 2019 European Language Industry Survey show that industry is in good health, with 69 of professionals surveyed expecting growth in this year, and language service companies reporting an increase in recruitment last year. Dear colleagues, dear participants, we care, we aware, and we dare to push the boundaries of innovation and learning so that together we shape the future of our profession. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Martikonis, for inciting us to care, to be aware, and to dare. We will certainly make it our mission. And we will be moving ahead to our next speaker. It's a very intense and interesting panel we have here. And I would like to welcome Dr. Sofía García-Beyaert, who is a consultant and interpreter trainer. She's one of the authors of the pioneering textbook, The Community Interpreter, and teaches interpreting skills in Washington, in the US. She's the founder of Arcus Institute, an organization that provides consulting in language access and intercultural communication, and offers continuing education opportunities for professional interpreters. She has served on the board of the Northwest Translators and Interpreters Society and on curriculum advisory committees for institutions of higher education. Her dedication to the field of interpreting and intercultural communication has taken different shapes. Her most recent commitment includes a documentary film project that tells real-life stories of failed intercultural communication and its ramifications. Dr. Sofía, please do frame the societal value of community interpreting.
Thank you very much. It's really my pleasure to be here. And I would like to start by thanking the organizers and the Translation and Interpreting Institute for the invitation. It's really an honor. My presentation today will address community interpreting, which is a matter of public concern in intercultural societies. As a subfield of the interpreting field, it is a very underdeveloped, it's an underdeveloped field compared to other settings of interpreting. And I am convinced for that reason that framing the societal value of community interpreting is of critical importance. And when we talk about frames, what we mean is social constructions of social phenomena. So frames, as social constructions, they can change and they can evolve over time, and they can do so organically or they can do so strategically. But a frame determines our perception of a given issue. So what is then, excuse me, what is an effective frame for community interpreting for professionals and for society at large? These are the two sections of my presentation today. But first, I will start by addressing what is community interpreting. And I'll do that through a video. It's a very short video and it's an effective one to contextualize the topic, and it will also be an excellent visual support because it's really well made for my analysis later in the presentation.
Excuse me, sir, I'm so sorry. She's been crying nonstop. She has a temperature of 105. I don't know what to do.
Vi roles interessantes.
Please, every time I see her, she jumps up.
Vi roles interessantes.
What are you saying? Can you just look at her? No, she's burning up. Just keep.
Vi roles la anglan.
What? She's burning up. Feel her head.
Tranquilli, Nancy. The mother is Oscar.
What is he doing?
Do you have?
My baby, she's got a temperature of 105. Every time I feed her, she throws up. Please, can you?
Tienes que dar por temporal.
She's burning up. Feel her head.
Paramedic.
Just feel her head. Feel her head. Just someone let me in this door. Does anyone understand what I'm saying? Please, someone help me.
8% of U.S. citizens speak English. For these 25 million Americans, professional interpreters can mean the difference between life and death.
So at this point, I've watched this video dozens of times, and I think every time I watch it, it gets me. In order for all parties in this situation to be able to address the emergency, not just the mother, but also the healthcare providers, for them to address the emergency, there needs to be a couple of conditions to be met. First of all, we have to have interpreting services available, and that takes decision makers to set the systems in place for the interpreter to be available in a situation that it's needed. But it also goes beyond that. It also takes the public, because the public has an impact on the course of policy. So availability is about society at large, and reliability of the service is the second condition necessary. When the service is available, not anybody can do the interpreting job effectively, so we need a reliable professional. That part is about professionalism. So let's talk about professionals. An important tool for professional consistency and reliability are codes of ethics. In 2005, the NCIHC, that's an acronym that stands for National Coalition for Interpreters in Healthcare in the United States, they developed the first code of ethics and standards of practice for healthcare in the United States, and it has influenced the profession beyond healthcare, and not just nationally but also internationally. After that, several codes of ethics were developed using theirs as an inspiration. What you see on the screen are ethical tenets from a distillation of several code of ethics that came after the NCIHC one. And you might recognize some of those ethical tenets from other, that apply also to other areas of translation, but some of them are very specific to community interpreting. Transparency, direct communication, professional boundaries, and intercultural communication. I don't have a lot of time to get into all the details of it, but I do want to highlight that these ethical tenets address something that goes beyond message conversion. It's definitely essential for the community interpreter to be effective at message conversion, but there's a specific skill of community interpreters that relates to their ability to manage tricky situations where they need to have on-the-spot decision-making on how to manage the flow of communication. And often what that looks like is the interpreter needs to remind the parties of the role of the interpreter and remind herself or himself of what it takes to stay in role. And it takes a lot of don'ts. Do not do this, do not do that, do not do that. And for a profession that is typically made of people who like to help, to be told that you cannot do certain things in order to do your role professionally can be tricky. So you have to have really good reasons to stick to those and to understand why you are being limited in your role. So what I have found to be a good way of motivating my decision-making, restricting my role, is the concept of communicative autonomy. So that's a higher order of, a higher value, a higher order that allows me to say, why am I making this decision in each situation? So with the communicative autonomy as that frame for the professionalism of community interpreters, and a community interpreter could have this oath, this professional oath. As a community interpreter, I will support the communicative autonomy of the parties I interpret for to help them maintain responsibility for and control over their own communication. I will, and then we have the professional tenets. Everything is tied back to that overarching concept of communicative autonomy. So that frame is actually an innovation. This is a result of the work I did with co-authors on the ethics and standards that are part of the community interpreting textbook. That was the first textbook in community interpreting. We published it in 2015, and that frame was an innovation. In 2013, when I was in Toronto at the Critical Link Conference, which is the conference in community interpreting, happens every 3 years and gathers, is an international gathering very much like this one, specializing in the aspects of interpreting in the community. The NIHC, which is the organization I mentioned before that issued the first ethics and standards, had these badges that they were passing out. And the frame for them, in order to advocate for healthcare interpreting at that point, was language rights are human rights. And I took this picture of my colleague wearing the badge because at the time I was doing field work on this very field of study, and I had realized that the language focus as a frame for community interpreting was problematic. So I took the picture and thought, we'll see what I do with this. So stay with that idea as we move on to the society aspect of community interpreting. So community interpreting does not only happen in healthcare, it's also in police settings, rooms, schools, social services, and any other service that exists to preserve the dignity and well-being of every member of society. So in those situations, it should not be up to the end user to come up with a way of getting an interpreter, that's why it is a matter of public concern. So what does it take to get to a decent level, if not ideal level, of availability and reliability of communities interpreting services? Well, when we think about language, and here let's refer back to that language rights are human rights, right? We often think about a group, and if that group is not our language group, then that group is framed as the other. It's us versus them very often, and when the other is not part of the majority group and we are part of the majority group, very often the other is depicted as less deserving. And that is an implicit bias that we carry. So it is interesting to look at the video and analyze some decisions that they made as they produced the video. Did anybody recognize the language that the service users are speaking? Please say it loud so I can hear you. Norwegian, Spanish, what else can we hear? Esperanto, yes. The gentleman here in the front got the right answer. So Esperanto is a language that was introduced in 1887. So as opposed to other languages, Esperanto is a made-up language, and it was invented with the goal of allowing communication across cultures without the identity aspect. So it is interesting to notice on the wiki, this is from the Wikipedia, the American entry for Esperanto, they say it's a politically unbiased, and I want to add quotes to that, but it is the goal for Esperanto to be a politically unbiased language. So when I think the producers of the video were really smart in doing this video because of three strategies. One is their choice of Esperanto for the service providers, but then they also had the service user be very clearly a standard majority person. She speaks English. She looks very much like the majority of the population in the United States. Or the majority group, maybe not the statistical majority, I don't know about that, but the majority group in the United States. And another choice that they made was to make everybody look alike. So service users and service providers look alike. Look at their clothes. Even their clothing is the same. So I don't know how intentional that was or not, but I think it was very effective at controlling for our implicit bias. As the audience, that identity piece taking, and then the audience can be focusing on the communication aspect. So I think identity really matters when we talk about communicating, but I think, unfortunately, that it matters adversely. I think that we are faced with a conundrum with identity in community interpreting, because we need to go beyond conceptions of identity to grasp the essential societal value of community interpreting, and this is why I suggest that we focus on communication rights as a frame. But on the other hand, since the 1950s in the United States and with the civil rights movement, it's through identity politics that we've made advancements in social justice. So what identity politics means is that members of particular social groups come together due to shared experiences of injustice to make claims that enter the political agenda. So some examples are the Black Lives Matter movement recently and the Me Too movement, or from a few decades ago in the field of interpreting, the deaf community is entitled nowadays to auxiliary aids and services. That means interpreting services for access purposes stipulated by the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act. So with that conundrum, what is our way forward in community interpreting? I wonder if you have insights on these ideas. Let me restate the conundrum before I finalize my presentation. So a frame that successfully captures the essence of community interpreting and its contribution to society stays away from identity considerations. However, culture and social justice tend to identity politics, that is claims that are formulated around the shared experience of injustice by members of the group. So I don't have a final answer to this, but where I stand today, and I keep evolving in my thought process around this topic, is that we probably need a little bit of both, and that we need definitely the driving force of interest groups. Let's think about this is made up situation using a real organization as an example. There is an organization called Latino Community Fund in Washington State, and they defend the interests of the Hispanic population. So I could imagine Latino Community Fund, maybe, I don't want to place intentions on their behalf, but let's imagine a situation where they decide to sue the government because of lack of access of the Hispanic community. Well, this is an identity claim by an interest group. Now, if the Latino Community Fund can go beyond aspect of language and use communication rights as the overarching frame and keep in sight that communication as the essence of the problem rather than the language identity claim, then their progress in their political action can benefit other groups, not just the Hispanic community. So language, to conclude, is essential to cultural identities, and as such, it has potential of pulling us apart, unfortunately. But communication is essential to what makes us human, and that brings us together. With that, thank you very much for your attention.
We do have to run a little now. We are pressed for time. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we are now about to cross over to other territories. The territory of video game localization. And to spark our interest, we have Dr. Miguel Bernal-Merino, a creative thinker and undoubtedly the world-leading researcher in video game localization. I will very quickly go over his profile. In a snippet, he is the author of the acclaimed monograph Translation and Localization in Video Games, Making Entertainment Software Global. He has launched, and he is still leading, two of the, I would say, the most prominent international events in this field. The Game Localization Roundtable at the heart of language service industry, and the Localization Summit, where the main developers for the gaming industry come together. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Joselia. Thank you, the Entire Foundation and the university, and thank you everybody for coming. I'd like to call this session Localization and Translation of Multimedia Interactive Entertainment Software, because when you call, I think video game is a very loaded term, and most people, if I were to ask how many of you play video games, you immediately go, well, why would you play video games? That's a silly thing for children. My interest here is not so much the gaming aspect, but the technology aspect of it. Video games are the most complex multimedia product that is created, and it has so many challenges put together in one single product that the traditional translation studies don't apply fully to solve these problems. You can be sure that more multimedia interactive programs are going to be available more frequently, and they are going to present all the same challenges that we find in video games. So let me just show you. I like to, like Joselia said, I try to participate as much as possible in academic and industry conferences just to make sure I get all the information right. Basically, I will give you some figures to begin with. There is obviously no globalization at all without localization. So without the people here and the expertise you all are developing, the globalization is simply not possible. These are the figures. The global video game market is worth at about $138 billion annually and growing. As you can see, although English is the lingua franca, and this is what we're using here as well, the bigger markets or the other markets are always more. So there's a lot of interest in translating in and out of Chinese and in and out of all the other languages in the European Union and the Middle East and well, all across the world, obviously. And all of this growth, $138 billion, is mostly due to localization. So go like this, guys. There is growth in all platforms, whether you use them for gaming or for your usual business. Just think about it. If I borrow your mobile phone and I change the language there, you probably will not be able to use it at all. That is localization. Video games, whether you're using console games, PC games, or mobile games, whatever the platform, all the sectors are growing in all markets at the same time. Obviously, more localization, more users, more sales. This is what the industry wants. And the growth is being ongoing, and it continues upwards of 10%, 20%, depending on the sector. That's a lot of money, that's a lot of business. Now, a video game or a multimedia interactive entertainment software product is made of many different types of texts. Text types, as have been mentioned already, are very key in the teaching of translation. So you find text in the user interface, you find text in captions and subtitles, in the scripts that are voiced over, in the help files, the tutorials, the marketing material, even the graphics may have text. The textures have images that have meaning. So the textures and the images may need to be translated. The music may be changed, the voiceover may be changed with that. Even the physics and the actual gameplay, the functionality of the actual game machine, because a video game is a game machine, may need to change when you change it from country to country. And this is normally invisible to some translators because they only get involved in the text aspect of it. If I ask you which bits of a video game may need to be localized, well, like I said, most of them may need to be localized, which makes it into a very complex and very lengthy process. Just to mention some examples, because I assume that many of you do not play video games. As you can see, many video games will display text in any part of the screen, very often in any color, and all this information is essential to use the game machine. We will see why it will be a problem. But the user interface, whether a video game, software product, or a mobile phone application, this is a big issue, the user interface. Obviously, the website, like I mentioned before, with all the information about the game products, what's the storyline there, but also what are the technical requirements there, what languages can I access there, the community forums, all this material is also being translated by game publishers and game developers. And this is also fitting into the video game localization industry. So more jobs for our students and more areas to research. Obviously, the game, although with moving into a model of streaming and downloading everything, that's only in the more highly developed areas where there is infrastructure for it. But all the other places, we go back to the usual packaging. All the packaging needs to be translated. It's not only for language enablement, it's also for legal requirements and technical specifications. All these things, again, they don't normally come under the remit of a translation, but a translation localization company for video games will need to take care of this. And anyone who works in the localization industry will have to look into this, because if you're not selling your products, obviously you're not making money, you're out of business. So the packaging, the websites, the legal requirements, the technical specifications, all of these are part of localization. With any product you buy, whether you read it or not, there is a manual. There are different ways of controlling that, how you interface with your products through the different keys on your keyboard, or the different buttons on the controller, or the different icons on your mobile screen that you tap on. And some of that maybe need to be changed. The end user license agreement, like with any product you buy, again, needs to be translated and needs to be adjusted to the legal requirements of each country, of each territory. There are video games, many of them try to be cinematic, so there is a lot of dialogue, a lot of video, a lot of conversation between characters, real and imagined, belonging to very different traditions, very different narratives, very different mythologies. All these things need to be mediated and are incredibly difficult transcreation or creation work. The user interface, the graphics, the mechanics, everything that a translator does is reflected on what the video game is going to do. And remember, a video game in this case, because it's entertainment software, is trying to engage the user, the player, to live through an adventure, being the protagonist of that adventure. Translation here, you don't need to know Spanish to have the problem here, but you can see that if there are the buttons, the icons, the text, the image, and the interaction, if they're not well aligned, the information will be lost. It will give a bad image of the product because it doesn't fit the requirements, or it's just a mismatch of information being offered. This is very common in the localization industry, and is still a big problem in the game localization industry because of the process they use, and I'll show how. So, like I said, there's many dialogues in games, being an interactive adventure. These dialogues don't read like the subtitles in a film because they are meant to be interactive. So, depending on what is the adventure, you can choose what to say and who to say it to, and then the game will change accordingly. The reason why it's relevant is that the information is not necessarily available to the people translating, because the people translating will not have the game, will not be available for them at all, and they will be translating from what I call naked spreadsheets, just tables with lines and lines of text. You don't get any game, they don't get anything else. It's just tables and more tables and more tables, which make it, I suppose, you're thinking, well, so what happens with the context? And with the context, what happens is not there. So translators just work with this type of information. Not only that, but the text in the adventure, it normally relates to the video game world, which is a fantasy created in virtual geometry and geography inside the game, and the text itself will refer to places within that game. If you cannot understand the text, if the text has been translated badly without the information about the geography and topography of the game will be misunderstood, and then the user, the player, will be lost. Therefore, your product fails. If your product fails, you're not making money. Video games obviously are a very visual thing, but they are a very pragmatic thing. Not pressing the right buttons at the right time, there is no game. There simply is no game. That's the end of it. So if the player, the user, is not engaged, the game stops. If the game stops, again, there's no saving. And there are many puzzles and many things that are resolved just by tricky language. Graphics, visual information, textuals, text that are pasted or wrapped around the wireframe of the animations, again, need to be translated because they are meaningful to the gameplay. All the information, although it may be a drawing, is still relevant, so it still needs to be translated. And that is a lot of time and money that's invested in the graphic artists having to redo the graphics and having to re-film or re-render the images in the game. This is again a very complex and very costly endeavor. Music and lyrics, all these games may be changed because a particular type of music is preferred in that particular country or that particular territory, or because it's just seen in bad taste, or it's just out of fashion, or it makes a better use of the target audience, it pays more attention to it, so it's going to sell more copies in those. So imagine a karaoke game obviously, if you want to, so it's going to sell more copies in those. So imagine a karaoke game. Obviously, if you want to sell the karaoke game in Spain, for example, you want people to sing things in Spanish. Well, very logical. It's not always so easy from the standpoint to develop it that way. But it has been growing and it's fully fledged, fully developed now. To make it even more complex, if that was enough, in video games, because of the interactivity, right, the way the semiotics affect the pragmatics, the interactivity means that the player can choose one option or another option. And in different parts of the game, that will be illustrated because there are formulas, there is algorithms, linguistic formulae, where the sentence is not written anywhere. They just write a formula, and particular variables will change depending on what the user is choosing. So, and this will be hopefully, I can explain this. So, it's a formula where it says, well, give me an adjective, give me a noun, from position, the name of a band, at the name of a venue. Formula which makes up the headline of the illusion newspaper headline that you read in the, because this is from Guitar Hero, so you're supposed to be a rising star. No one translates this sentence. The sentence is made up on real time by the game machine. That means that no one has ever put together these sentences before. It's the machine doing it. Now the problem, obviously, as translators, you already noticed, when you put an adjective with a noun and a preposition, some of these things will change locations. It will be in a different part because of the syntax. It will change morphology because of the way decline, combine, conjugate, etc. So again, this is something that is very typical in video games and very difficult to address because the formula does not account for other languages, other English in this case. Obviously, you're all linguists. I don't need to explain to you how different languages are. So the warrior will not kill the dragon, no matará al dragón, or the sensible dragon will rule tonight. All these sentences change in syntax, morphology, and just linguistic aspects. And the game industry, they don't have linguists. They just don't understand how complex it really, really is. A lot of people that do not do translations, I'm sure you heard this, they just believe in, well, just give me the literal translation. Just tell me exactly what it is. Just doesn't exist. Distinctly does not exist. And it's still a problem in the video game industry because being a technology-focused industry, they want things to be simple. They want things to be, 1 equals 1, 2 equals 2, 3 equals 3, and that's that. Don't give me any variety on that. That's part of the process, and that's binary code, zeros and ones, but that's not the real world. So we as translators mediate that complexity. Even gameplay. Games, although you could never know this unless you play different versions, the gameplay itself, the physics, how complicated the game is, will change from country to country. In some countries, they like a particular type of game to be easy, and in other countries, they like that same game to be easier. So they change the gameplay and the physics. Again, that's not done by translators. Nowadays, you can interface with technology, with your gestures, body movements, or your hand movements. Most equipments have cameras looking at you, the user, the player. And depending on how you move your arms, your head, your legs, you can communicate with the machine. This, as we know, movements and gestures have meaning. If they have meaning, they are cultural. If they are cultural, they need to be translated because they can be understood, misunderstood, or offensive. You don't want to do that. Like I said, despite all that, despite all the bells and whistles that the video game industry boasts about, I'm very proudly so, everything, or the only thing that translators use is an Excel table. So you have to make the magic of the video game, multimedia interactive entertainment software, from the naked table. This is very difficult indeed because of the industrial process. So obviously, global companies internationalize to localize, which means they get ready from pre-production through production and post-production so that they can hit the simultaneous world shipment. Nowadays, most video game companies go on to 12 languages by default for simultaneous global release. This is a summary of the text types in video games. We have narrative types, technical text types, didactic, promotional, legal, dialogic, or literary. All these text types appear in the very same video game product, and they all need to be done by the same team of translators. So, to conclude, multimedia interactive entertainment software localization needs to find the balance between linguistic enablement, cultural mediation, technical functionality, and immersive enjoyment of all assets and text types in order to guarantee that playability is localized. And that's just some of the resources, and thank you for your attention.
This would be the moment where we would open the floor for questions. Unfortunately, that will not be happening now because of the time, unless you desperately want to place a question or to Dr. Amal also. I suggest we ask those questions throughout our 2 days, and please come back tomorrow at the end for the final session, where space is all for questions and answers. We will be joined by our QCRI colleagues, the team behind the live subtitling, the live translation that is happening here today. And please do keep your questions, do bring them up tomorrow, do approach our keynote speakers. Again, I thank you for sparking our interest. They will be going to the different panels. They will be seeing what directions we are all going in, and tomorrow we will be summarizing and taking our conversation to the next level. I thank you all. I thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Joselia, and thank you to the distinguished speakers for your insightful input. And thank you to the audience for your contribution and participation. I would like to invite Dr. Amal to the stage once again to thank our guests.
can you come down? We can't forget our alumna. Come here. Don't leave us yet. We have a day full of events, and hopefully you'll have more time to interact with the speakers. Noor is our alumna. She has been our audio describer.
For about 30 minutes in exhibition hall 2, and following that we will have 3 panels running at the same time until 12:30. After that we'll have lunch from 12:30 till 2 in exhibition hall 2. Thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy the rest of our sessions throughout the day.